So the question was, which is more important, venue or game design and execution?
An exciting venue definitely adds to the game. So game design can definitely make a big difference as well. But I think it can go either way. I mean, I've got the old Kempton Park Hospital, and if you host a pretty standard game style there, you can still have an amazing game. As soon as you start making the game mode a lot more technical and full of objectives or too many objectives, it kind of ruins the venue as a game, or as a way to actually even just enjoy the venue. So I've noticed with certain venues, simple game designs work better than some venues with more complicated game designs.
12, 13 years ago, major venues in the US were really hard to come by. And our ability to get on sites like that was really, really limited. But stuff started sort of opening up to us, and I don't know, probably 2000. It probably started about 2006, 2007. So that's like 15 years ago now. Stuff really started opening up more. There were more venues and over the next 5 years or so, a lot of venues were available. And so initially, like, a really cool venue was all you needed. Like, it almost didn't matter what you did with the gameplay. Everybody was just so excited to play at this really cool facility. Like, as long as you didn't just completely screw up the gameplay, everything was good, because it was a fun venue and you're playing on this like military facility. Like, this is super cool. I've never done this before. Nobody's ever done this before. But 5 or 10 years of that, you can no longer use the venue as a crutch, as a game organizer. It gets to a point where people, even if they haven't played that venue in particular, they've played enough that are close, like enough cool venues that are like it, that just the fact that it's a really cool venue isn't enough anymore. And by that, I don't mean that it necessarily needs to be more complex gameplay, because I actually personally favor pretty simple gameplay. I don't need a whole bunch of objectives and a whole bunch of like in-game stuff. Like give me a field that works for gameplay, and give me a target where the enemy is, and I'll go I'll go have fun on my own. Like, I don't need a ton of just sort of other stuff personally. But if the game isn't well executed, right? If they spend so much effort on just getting the venue and doing all that then, like, the rules aren't well enforced, or the instructions aren't clear, and all the stuff that sort of makes the game run smoothly, that becomes far more important once the community gets a bit more mature and is used to having the really cool venues. You can't just lean on that as a crutch anymore. Like, you got to be executing on the games. And I still feel like, I'm not mentioning any names, very specifically not mentioning any names, but I still feel like there are some game organizers in the US that haven't really realized that yet. They still feel like, hey, if I just get this venue, then that's going to be, and people will show up. It will get people to show up. It won't necessarily get people to have a good time.
Yeah, in South Africa, it's the same. You can overplay a venue, like you said. The venue pretty much becomes cease to exist kind of venue, where the numbers start to drop if you overplay that venue or too frequently. Just throwing games at the same venue over and over too frequently, you do ruin the venue. The players themselves are excited to play there. Yes, we get that. We know they are. And sometimes the players actually will come to me for a specific venue like Kempton Park Hospital, where they will be continuously saying, oh, when's the next one? And they've literally just finished playing an event, and they'll ask me, when's the next one there? So I do leave the events further apart so that it allows you that opportunity to actually forget a little bit about how it worked at the hospital, how you played or where you went. If you can do that, I think you can keep a venue alive. But if you're hosting a venue every weekend or every second weekend, it's going to get boring, and it's going to get boring fast.
Here's a comment that I actually think is true. It says, I love creative game scenarios. They don't have to be complicated, but also don't take themselves too seriously. Fallout, Resident Evil, and such. That's actually a really good. I think a lot of those. I think one thing that a trap that we in the U.S. tend to fall into is we try to make our gameplay styles like super military-ish, if that makes sense. Yeah. Versus making them game oriented and just stuff that's fun. Like, this doesn't have to be a realistic, military scenario. It needs to be a format that makes it fun and competitive to play. The ones I get sort of worn out on are, and I know some people get into like super into command structure and all that kind of stuff, but like, if the game is structured so that I have to constantly be on the radio passing stuff up and down the command chain in order to get instructions for the next thing I'm supposed to do, I just get tired of that. Like, just give me something that is.
Everyone does.
Like, I don't want to sit here and well, we moved, we took the next hill. Now we need to call in and get instructions for the next thing to do. Like, that's not that. I get worn out from that. I want to go shoot people.